everybody, and welcome back to the Nora Seroussi Show. So, every week you tune in and you think, what's she discussing today? Who does she have? Well, this is actually a very special evening for me because the gentleman that I have is actually a very long-time friend of my daddy's and now of mine. And we have a long history together, so I'd like to introduce you and say hello to Mr. Mișu Negrițoiu.
Hello. Hello, Nora. Hello, everybody.
How are you doing?
Happy to be here tonight.
I'm so glad that you said yes. And I was thinking, okay, what kind of questions? Because, you know, he's very serious. And I wrote on the tagline, you know, business and banking legend, which you are. Because I do want to say I told my bank that
Eventually I was.
You were, you are, you will be. You will be remembered as it's something that stays with you. And I said I have the gentleman, and they were like, oh, and I said, you see, people, we get excited. Now, how many decades, I could actually talk in decades here. How many decades do I know you?
I was hesitating to go back in history because people, they look to you and they said that they're old guys, they're old staff. Now, particularly in the current era with the digitization and working from home, and it is quite new generation. How much this generation will be interested what we done in the last 30, 40 or even 50 years. Actually, I've been working still working for 47 years without any interruption, even without medical leave or things like that. So, yes, we can go back because there are things that people should know or remember talking to younger people. So actually my deputies in the last institutions, I've been there 20 years younger. Some of them, they were my former students, and we worked together for a decade or two. And other traveling, talking, how was during the transition, how were in the early days of the transition in Romania from communist to market economy, or how was before. They seem to be interested and say, yeah, what to be? Why don't you either write it or speak about it? But I'm not convinced that there is a dedicated audience that would like to share past experience. Even they are not interested why are we here and how we are here. We live, I would say, in the lavish environment where for Romania, for instance, for investment is not an issue. You saw also the previous government, they were either trying to punish there is too much for investment, or there is a discussion in Romania that how much is Romanian and Romanian companies in the key sectors, soon might be discussed as the strategic sector. But in the early 90s, we were starving for investment, and we were fully aware nothing will move ahead without having direct foreign investment with transfer of technology, transfer of management experience, transfer of financial resources, reorganizing the companies and things like that. Before the revolution, for instance, Romania was exporting eventually 10 billion euros equivalent in dollars or Russian rubles. Today they are like eventually 80 billion this year, so 7-8 years. So how did we come here when people are complaining that Romanian industry has been destroyed, or that you see old industrial assets abandoned? However, we have rebuilt another industry, a new modern industry, reaching the level of an export of 70 billion euros. So we started in early 90s, and I was part of the game. And then when you look now that particularly these days, with the relocation of some industries, eventually from Asia, China, in Europe, Romania, I'm pretty sure that they will find a good place for location. But today it's a completely different game. I was brought in Romania in 1990. Actually, I was meant to be a diplomat, and I was a diplomat in the United States, and I was sort of a DCM in charge with economic affairs. And I was called back by the Prime Minister at that time to take over the promotion of the country to foreign investors.
Sorry, was that the point that you were already... I know you must have been doing something with my dad, because my dad, if I don't know the exact timing, but I know he was the president of the Foreign Investors
Actually, your
Association.
dad was one of the earliest and biggest foreign investors in Romania. It was in the industry where Romania was still competitive, in textile industry and garments, and your dad has built the first new factories in Romania. Again, we were starting having new transfer of technology, new plants, factories, and I had to struggle with the number of years with a certain image the country had in 91, 92. I will not repeat political events and things like that and so on, where foreign investors were hesitating, just hesitating because...
You're being very nice, hesitate. They were terrified, let's be honest.
Because they did not have enough information. They could not read the country, business-wise, I mean. And when you see, why do we go there? So actually, my job was traveling around, attending conferences, individual meetings with investors, big or small. My job was to put together the legislative package, laws and norms, and particularly my job was to liberalize. Before my time, making more investment in Romania for a foreigner, they could not get more than 40% of the shares of a company. Then I came and when I liberalized, you compared early 90s with these days where a lot of reforms are in process, where foreign investor could own 100% their company. They come here, they build, they run their business, is absolutely their business. They can do whatever they think is appropriate for the business and for the companies. They can export, sell. So Joe Seroussi knew he was an early entrant. He knew more about Romania. He liked Romanians and Romanian style, but particularly he was full of courage, daring, exploring.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt
Actually,
you.
I mean that you know better his life, where being in different locations, countries, and cities. That with daring attitude, as an explorer, pioneering different things. He did this in Romania. In my official capacity, I had to make him comfortable that his investment in Romania will be safe. And that investment, particularly in those days, I mean, after 1 year, after the fall of communism, nobody knew that this investment will not be eventually nationalized in 1 year or 2 or 3 or 10 years or 20 years. So how can you give? And the the comfort that they will put the money here, they will develop the business, and their business will be in 30 years inherited by the children and can be transferred in the family and still Seroussi business. And here we are. I mean, that is. But today, when you say, but this is absolutely normal. I mean, you've seen that in Romania that is normal life, normal economy, everything normal. In those days, it was very difficult to convince people that they will be fine. I mean, come over and you'll be fine. We did not have technology. I mean, remember, 30 years ago, 1990, we did not have internet, we did not have mobile, we did not have a lot of technological things that we are used today. So you say, how did you do in those days? So then I take the biggest, after Seroussi, 4 factories and one of the largest exporter at that time, and as a recognition, I've been wearing the brand for 2 decades, I think.
Oh, did you hear that?
That's actually
nice.
Visiting the factories, and then you know that we build up. It's very important that from business you build up a friendship relationship, and then how to keep balance, because you see that Western world, I mean, business is business, and friends, family, socializing is different, but both are interconnected in helps, understanding each other, giving the comfort, and then helping the business. So Joe, being the largest, being the earliest, he has become also the first president of the Romanian Foreign Direct Investment Association, and which I initiated, stimulated. I was at the time the head of the Romanian authority promoting or attracting the foreign investment, and I wanted to build up fast Western institutions. So being in the States, I met several people. I had to learn myself what means foreign investment, and how do you promote, how do you sell the country, and how do you execute? Because and what is your product? What do you sell? What do you say in Romania in 1990, 1991, where have to recognize, of course, that the industry was backward. And then, I mean, today, if you want to go to buy a car factory, you make sure that it's a new factory, that's a new technology. But in those days, if you come here and to buy, like Renault, a car factory, that you buy the location, because nothing inside was updated, technologically updated, and the production and the markets, we did not have the markets, and things like that. So then I had to be an interlocutor for the foreign investors to make them comfortable that is a future. They knew also without me that Romania will be a future market, that Romania will be a future production.
It was a gamble.
But
I remember, first I want to tell you that my father was a visionary. He had guts. He had amazing, because I remember now, you guys may not know, I was coming here since I was this high. So I've seen so many changes. This is when it was communist, with the changes. And I remember my father taking us to Odorhei and showing us some land, and he said, I'm going to build a factory there. And I'm like, in the middle of nowhere. I was like, okay, Dad. And that's when he built, I think it was in 18 months, he put up Norada. Mm. And when you were talking about the investors coming before, I have to tell you a very interesting story. Marks and Spencers, who are well known in the garment industry, they had come to Romania to see how things are going. And they came and they saw the factories, and they said, you know, flew back, I was flying to London, and they were sitting in front of me, and they said, you know, Ms. Seroussi, we have seen factories, but we didn't expect it in Eastern Europe to find something like this, because he built it really from the ground. It's amazing.
I mean, brand
new. It was amazing, but to
have
a company like that that's world renowned, I mean, you know, we didn't have cell phones in those days, so I couldn't call Dad and just say, I had to wait till I got off the phone, got to a landline, and I called Dad. So when I think back of what the two of you have been through, you know, and I know that you used to spend a lot of time with my dad, and that's where we have the friendship and the relationship, you know. I've seen so much. I know what you're talking about. And I think, I have to tell you that I think for some of the younger people, it's important for them to know about what happened before, because it does affect how it became today, all right? You're talking about no technology. No, nothing, people, no tech. I remember nothing. We used to come here every summer, and it actually, I would have told you, I wouldn't have lived here 20 years ago. It wouldn't have been possible for me. Now it's at such a level, it's something amazing. And Dad had vision, and he had the belief, and listen, he'd never convinced me to move over here. I was the one who said, I'm coming to live there. He was like, what? And I said, aren't you happy about it? Well, I don't want you changing my life. Actually, and I said, I will make you comfortable. Don't worry about it. I want to see how things are. And it wasn't really, I knew the business from doing it in Canada with him. I wanted to do other things. But I wanted to spend time next to him. But you know, it's when I look at it, and we took the kids for the anniversary like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was something. We wanted them to see what their grandfather had done. And it's very easy to talk about it in the abstract, but when you actually see it, every time that I go, I still get excited, because it's really, it's amazing. It's really, you know, something incredible. And I know people, when they were coming into Romania, used to go to him because he was the president. And that was, you know, people would come in and ask, where should we go? What should we do? Who should we talk to? And because my daddy had been here he was the oldest foreigner in Romania.
Actually, he was part of the history of foreign direct investment in Romania. He had an influence not only about the business environment, but also regulation. He was there are a lot of business associations today where they talk to the government, and they see the perspective of the business, I mean the tangible business and the day-to-day rules and regulations, and then in order to improve the norms and the legislation. In those days, I mean his association, Foreign Direct Investment Association, was the first one. And he is a person and a wise man. I mean, you know that he was particularly wise. And he was talking to the government representatives. He was advising how to make the regulations.
I remember that very well.
Making money, but making the business easier. There is a progress. I mean, we're talking about almost 30 years ago. In 30 years, the legislation and the people and the lawmakers have developed a lot, information. Now, I mean, after EU accession, that there was just a transposition of the Western legislation. In those days, it was nothing. So he was one of source of inspiration for good legislation and friendly legislation for investors in those days. But I mean, making the long story short, part of the business, with him I had a particular chemistry. Chemistry meaning more than friendship. We had the passion for food, for instance. He was cooking, I'm cooking. Even he was once invited in my house, and he cooked Middle Eastern stuff, dishes. And you know that we had same birthday. And actually it was easy to congratulate each other.
A belated happy birthday, that was 2 days ago, and I have to say it was hard. It's 2 years, and it's been hard.
Particularly, I mean, that was very, very nice and good times, and I learned a lot from him. As you know, I was newcomer. I mean, the country was coming in a new world and market economy, and we did not have too many people trained for market economy. The Romanians did not study abroad and were very difficult to find the right people to understand, to speak the same language, to make things better. So I met a lot of people, a lot of foreigners in those days. Actually, I was my school. There is not a university diploma how to operate in the market economy, but actually were the meetings with the foreigners, and he was the best and the longest. Maybe I spent the longest time with him. Later, I worked with advisors from different foreign direct investment institutions and things like that. So at the end, I wrote a book about this because there were not books on foreign direct investment. There are books developed in at least in main country, UK and Canada. One was a capital exporting country, the other was an inward foreign direct investment in Canada, and the schools have developed and talked about and then written about the advantages and how to make this investment more sustainable. I was part of a discussion at the United Nations where at that time they had very ideological views about foreign direct investment, but they moved and shifted toward the need. Actually was a recommendation for every country to attract foreign direct investment, and that was a priority for many countries in those days. Then you went into a competitive world. So I wrote myself a book. My PhD was in the theory of foreign direct investment and the impact on economic growth. And he also was sponsoring and encouraging me to publish the book, and I think I published the book sometime in 95, 96. But it was a long period of time, learning, education, and execution, and that was my job for 5, 6, 7 years with the government. Very intense experience.
I'm going to ask you
that is the second story, because I moved. What I did in those days, again, when I came to Romania, the Prime Minister brought me back in Romania as a counterpart interlocutor for discussion with the European Commission, was the General Director of Foreign Relations, DIGI General Directorate. That was I was his first interlocutor, he was my first interlocutor, and then we started to building up the relationship with the EU. Actually, I studied before in school, in the university, from theoretical perspective, the common market and the later European Union. But in practical terms, me and the Prime Minister at that time were the first interlocutors. We started the first cooperation agreements, and then then we were part of financial assistance from the EU. Today, we see today the package of 33 billion euros that Romania is going to receive under the umbrella of new generation EU. It's amazing. We are in a different world. In those days, my first assistance program back in 91, I think, was 100,000 euros, then 100 million 2 years later.
Wow.
100 million technical assistance for Romania was a success.
Was a big thing.
And they moved. We did not dream in those days that we will be equal member so short actually. That was in those days we were looking to the stabilization of the economy, society, that things were not as clear. So it was long way, and I was part of this way.
I
was part of the very beginnings.
I want to touch upon some of the things you said now, because I remember those days, and I remember the conversations that you had. And there were two problems specifically that I remember. One of them is that the laws kept changing, and my dad said it's very hard to tell somebody else to come in because every other week there's another law. So there was such instability because nobody wants to go somewhere and put your money, and that's why when a country gives incentives, it's a great thing. Because for us to do the factories, we have other countries that have given us incentives. You have to be thinking not once, twice, 10 times to figure out where should I, if you're going to put the same amount of money, you want to go where someone's going to give you the best deal. That's what I would have thought as far as a business. And because he was, the other thing he said is, politicians are politicians. When you want to do something as far as a business, you have to ask a person who does the business. The person who's risking their money, who has the experience of business. Because when somebody's sitting behind a desk making decisions for other people, it's one thing. It's another thing when he's going, he put the money where the mouth is, he built it, he did it. And then somebody sitting in a parliament somewhere making a thing, it directly affects him. So that was the two things that I learned right at the beginning. I want to ask you what is probably the two best takeaways you have from the relationship with my dad.
Well, the first one is that he helped me understanding how the market economy works. And very pragmatic. And there was not only one lesson, there were several lessons. Even I could not understand the business in those days. And the second was his vision and his, the trust and patience. You want to build something, take it in stages. It was not time for me in those days to jump. They were very good, but eventually I lost this in action later. If you talk now to a kid graduating the school that he has to invest in every single step and build up layers and floors and up top, nobody will take you seriously. They'll say, what? I mean, I'm graduating the school, now I want to have the best salary, and then eventually now he or she wants to work from home, and it is a precondition of the recruitment. But in business also, and the Romanians had to learn that you build strongly with a good foundation. The foundation, then another layer, and another floor, and another floor. That
sounds like my dad.
And then actually that he said that was sound attitude in life. Don't jump, and the measures, and this will. Then you will capitalize in stages also. I mean, making more money, even more money, then invest and more money. But as I said, I did it. I had a chance in those days. I mean, the chance was that some people, they pointed to me and they said, why don't you come here? Because you had some experience in foreign relations, and then you have also economic background, and I was before in foreign trade, and actually I knew how to contact and talk and negotiate and things like that, and I had very good years. Then, as you know, I was part of a government, and then later, and then I did my job.
And then you moved to the bank.
I moved in the bank.
I read something. I have to tell you what I read, and I did not know this. The first, how did they put it? Just a second. You were the first person to work in another, not a state-owned, foreign-owned bank.
I was the first CEO of a foreign bank.
Okay, there was something else that they said that I was like, I didn't know that. That was a big deal. Mișu, that is a big deal. That is a big deal. Think about it. 20.
What I did, actually, he helped me to start a new life. We have to restart. What I did before under the communists didn't help me too much. By contrary, I mean, and particularly I had to reread the books, the economic books, at the same time with the reality, with the execution, and I was very confident in the future. I built up a strong position, and I wanted to approach. I mean, at the beginning I had a chance that some people, they were appointing me in charge with this and this and that. I have to deliver, but then I didn't want to to stay the rest of my life captive to the state budget. Even today, people, they look to you and they say, well, I know this guy, he has been the 30 years with the government in public institution, and he took the money from the budget. Actually, we finance him or her. I said, I have to show that I can stay on my own feet and that I can contribute to any kind of business and in private sector and make money for myself. And that was one thing. Second, I did not look back to my age as being born or I went to school when and my age. Actually, I entered into market economy after the collapse of communists. I was 40. So at 40, you start a new life. At the 40, there is not too much continuation. If you don't start re-educating yourself, changing your values, thinking, reading, learning, then your life will be a disaster.
The point?
So then I started rebuilding my career, and I started banking as a young banker when I was 47. 47, and I've invested.
I was giving birth at 47, but never mind. He was banking.
It took me 10 years as a banker, as a junior banker, since I became CEO. So actually, I was not picked up by someone, put in a position, and I became a vice president or president of a bank and then running the bank.
No, it
also
doesn't
because
happen
actually
like
I was teaching the afaceri, international financing. So I was reading and books and carrying books from London in English for my students because finance teaching was poor in those days and different. So actually I started banking quite late. Now people are in their 40s, they are CEO of an institution or of a bank. So I started there. I was confident that I could.
Of all that.
I was confident that I can build, and I did. So becoming the first CEO 2005 or 6, became CEO of a foreign bank. Is not a joke. I mean that
it was a big deal.
That's
all right.
matter
You cannot
of
say.
confidence, particularly trust and
that
confidence
was a big deal.
and
Okay.
So actually, that was the history, and I was part. I mean, I was eventually meant to become a politician, but I was not good for politician. If you want to be a politician, you have to fight. I was not necessarily a fighter. I had strong values. I had strong positions. But I was a professional, and I was not fighting for. So you can see also these days. I mean, people are fighting. I was not as prepared to do that. So this way, I did not become a politician. In the 90s, I was somehow popular, very visible. Even polls show me in the top 3, 5, 10, whatever. I could invest in that, but I did not have the strong foundation. Maybe that I learned from your dad. That politics, even then, eventually was too late. Politics, you want to dedicate your young years and later, but you have to be made for it, structure, fighter, even for nonsense, but I couldn't. So then I realized that there is not sustainable life in politics. So I said, why should I stay? Actually, I'm leaving. Myself, my mentors, political mentors, or even some public were expecting that I will come back. And eventually I could come back, but I never did. So since then, when I came back, very late actually, my last my 3 years with the public institution in Romania was too late. Political life has changed so much. I was not part of it and part of this evolution. I was part of another world, and it was difficult for me to step in again, and particularly to communicate and work with the different attitude. It's just attitude.
2 things my dad taught me. Don't get involved in politics. And the other thing I said, Daddy, I would be terrible. For a politician, you have to be very, what's the word? I may be agreeable, maybe diplomatic. I'm not any of those. So I said, I think I would be the worst politician because I have a big mouth. That's the truth. So I was like, okay, Dad, it's not an avenue I'm going to pursue. Let me be honest. If I want to ask you another question. Now, if you had the young people watching today, and they want to go into banking, 2 pieces of advice. How would you steer them in the right direction?
Actually, I did it for many years.
Yeah, but to the audience who may be curious about this, yeah? And they hear somebody who, as he said, the first CEO of a foreign bank, you're the right person to ask. If I don't ask you, who am I going to ask?
Late 90s, early 2000, I was teaching international finance for 10 years, yeah. Picking up best brain in my classes for ING. Actually, I built a generation of execution managers, leaders in the bank. They are running the bank now. They are my former students in ASE.
Very nice.
Actually, what I did in those days, this was the former school that I graduated, but was mostly more international trade, and that way open a new a niche for the graduates of the international trade become the faculty of international relations, the banking, and many then. But working hard, I think, if you go in banking, you have to prepare to sacrifice somehow some days or early years to work hard to become a good professional. Banking is a very institutionalized institution, and these days is a different banking than my days. Actually, it was more classic banking, now more modern digital. As you've seen now, banks have work, 90% of the staff are working from home, so they are very digitized and technologized. So then you have, but now everybody is
right now everybody's
familiar
working from home
with these, and work hard and expect the recognition. If you are prepared to expect the recognition later, not tomorrow, then you have to join this business. And this business is very institutionalized, very governed by norms and details and supervision. So actually has everything, and you have to be very clean, very dedicated, very transparent. Definitely you have to work for your clients, but everybody work for their clients, and invest in your career. If these days people are doing, they have this approach, maybe is feasible. These days, I think, I mean, the YZ generation and the others, they might bomb promotion immediately, salary and things like that. Banking is still a sort of flat business. You don't have skyrocketing evolution, even income is steady, growing steady, and then these are the type of people suited for banking. So you have to have certain structure, because otherwise there are former bankers, entrepreneurs, maybe there are good entrepreneurs, but it will be more difficult that in mass the people move from banking into entrepreneurship, because you are more oriented toward rules, regulation, sort of bureaucracy. When you are an entrepreneur, I mean, you don't like bureaucracy, you want a simple thing, go straight forward and taking risk. In banking, then risk eventually is the main concern, and then risk management is in everything from IT to lending and things like that.
I think in any business, preparation is the key. Preparation, because you have to, number one, we always talk about, you have set a goal, the steps to the goal. Okay, maybe my daddy probably would have said it in a different way, the foundation, all that, but let's just say in my lingo nowadays, it would be have the goal, set the goal, figure out what you need, visualize, and, step by step. Because sometimes, I want to jump in and be the top banker. You can't do that. You start as a junior, then you move up to the next step, then you move to the next step, and then you become president. I think sometimes people are not realistic about it, okay? And they'll see you and they see the picture.
I think more and more.
Sorry?
More and more they are not realistic.
No, they're not realistic. I look at you, we've just heard what you went through, and it was a struggle and all this. And they look at you, and you cannot be lazy. That's number one. In any business, if you want to run a business or do any of that, you cannot be lazy. They look at the end result and the finished product, and they say, I want to do that. But there's a lot of steps there. There's a lot of stepping stones. Patience, integrity, work ethic, all of this we need to talk about, especially for the young generation, because a lot of them, I don't say, some of them are very lazy. I have had the experience of working with younger people, and I've been very lucky. I have terrific people next to me. But there are others that I come in and I really cannot understand how on earth they cannot be in my office, because I need people that are proactive, want to do things, Not to sit there and just like this. It's not going to work like that. You will never get it, and I will write it for you. You'll never get anywhere. You'll never do anything. I will put it for you in writing. You have to have, we have a word in America. I don't even know how you're going to translate this, people. Gumption. Do you know what gumption is?
No.
All right, gumption is like when you have the gum. It's nothing. It's not like a swear word or anything. He's got this is like, you understand? The gumption. To get up and do it, the wherewithal, not just to say, I wish no, get up and do it. And that's where sometimes I get frustrated, because I come from America. We have a different way of looking at things. You've been in America and you know that. And the work ethic is, they actually work all the time there. And by the way, guys, they don't get paid vacation. Did you know that? So,
or very
like nothing. The work ethic is very different there. The work ethic here is very different. And because I've also lived in England, I grew up in Canada, I see the different things, maybe as an insider, outsider, Anyway, I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with us. It was wonderful to have you. I'd like to thank my guest, Mișu Negrițoiu.
Time is gone.
That's it.
We just started. Thank you. It's a privilege.
And say good night, y'all. Thank you very much. See you soon. Good night. Ciao.